Some places were built to hold people. Others were built to hold something that should never be let out. This is Rikers Island's forgotten wing. Abandoned, sealed, and left to rot. But the things locked inside, they remember. Tonight on Dark Watch Files. You're about to hear what happens when the rules aren't just protocol. They're survival. Rule 1. Salute the ghost. Rule 2. Ignore the screaming door. Rule 3. Never touch the blood-soaked keys. And trust me, this one gets worse with every rule broken. Stay to the end, because what happens in the final minutes might just follow you into your own silence. If this kind of story gives you chills, drop a comment and tell us which rule you would have broken, or which one you wouldn't survive. And hey, if you're into haunted places, cursed routines, and things that don't stay dead, hit that subscribe button. We've got more coming. Some guys leave the service and chase the adrenaline. Me? I chase the quiet. Found the deepest silence I could imagine right here, smack in the middle of New York City's festering boil. Rikers Island, not the active part, humming with barely contained chaos, but C-block. Decommissioned 30 years ago. A concrete Lazarus tomb slowly decaying on the edge of the East River. They paid me decent money to be the sole night watchman, to guard dust motes and the ghosts of bad decisions. Sounded perfect. Keeps me out of my own head, mostly, until the sun goes down. Then you remember the rules, Jake Riley's rules, because down these echoing cell blocks, history isn't dead. It's just waiting. The shift change always felt like sealing a vault. I'd meet Jake Riley, the veteran guard I was replacing, at the heavy steel gate separating C-block from the administrative corridor that still connected, distantly, to the island's living sections. He'd hand over the keys, his eyes pouched and weary from decades walking these concrete floors, scanning my face with an intensity that had nothing to do with standard procedure. Tonight was no different. The air inside C-block hit me first. Cold, damp, thick with the smell of mildew, rust, peeling lead paint, and something else. Something fouler, like stale sweat and old, ingrained despair that no amount of industrial cleaner could ever erase. Emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows down the main corridor. The rows of cell doors on the multi-tiered blocks, gaping like empty mouths. The silence was immense, broken only by the drip of unseen water, the groan of stressed metal, and sometimes muffled shouts or alarms bleeding faintly from the active prison complex nearby. A reminder of the contained chaos just beyond these dead. Whilst Jake, looking even more tired than usual, was waiting by the dilapidated guard station just inside the entrance. Before handing over the heavy key ring, he went through his ritual. He pulled a small pouch from his worn jacket pocket, took a pinch of coarse gray salt, and carefully traced a barely visible symbol on the dusty console. Then he did the same with the threshold of the C-block entrance behind me. Superstition or something else in this place? The line blurred. All right. Well, he sighed, finally handing me the keys. They felt cold, heavy. She's all yours till dawn. He passed me a crumpled printout. Another email from that historian, Holloway. Wants detailed photos of the ventilation shafts on Tier 2 now. Says it's for structural integrity assessment. Right. He snorted, a harsh, cynical sound. Academics nosing around. Don't tell them anything they don't need to know. My radio crackled. Routine check-in from Central Dispatch, located over in the main, active part of the island. I keyed the mic. C-block, Officer Bell, reporting. All secure. The reply came back. Female voice, tinged with the usual graveyard shift weariness, but also something else. Caution, Officer Anya Sharma, maybe ex-military like me, judging by her tone sometimes. Roger that, Bell. Keep it that way, and try not to listen to the walls too much over there tonight. Heard things are active, click, cryptic, unsettling, and typical. No one liked talking specifics about C-block. Jake seemed to understand the unspoken warning in Sharma's sign-off. He turned back to me. his face grim in the flickering emergency light, his voice dropping low. Right? The list? You remember the list, Belle? Because down here, the official handbook won't save your ass. These rules will. He didn't wait for my nod. He knew I knew them. He just needed to say them again, reinforcing their weight, their non-negotiable reality in this place. Rule 1, he began, tapping a gnarled finger on the dusty console for emphasis. You're walking the tiers. C block, D block, doesn't matter. You see an inmate, old-timer, black and white stripes like out of a damn movie, standing at attention, maybe outside cell 13 on C tier, maybe elsewhere. He looks right at you, and he salutes. Crisp, sharp, Jake demonstrated with a jerky, phantom salute. You salute back, just like that. Sharp, respectful. You don't, well, he gets lonely, follows you around. You don't want him following you. Rule 2, his gaze flickered towards the dark opening of a corridor leading deeper into the block. A cell door. Might start rattling, shaking like hell itself is trying to get out. Might hear screaming from inside, begging, pleading. Sounds real as anything. Doesn't matter. You keep walking. You do not stop. You do not investigate, and you absolutely do not unlock or open that damn door. Let it shake. Let it scream. It'll pass. Opening it, that lets the bad air out. And rule 3, he leaned in, his voice dropping to a strained whisper, smelling faintly of stale coffee and something bitter like fear. Your keys. He tapped the heavy ring now clipped to my belt. Sometimes, they just vanish, right off your belt. Gone. Don't waste time looking right then. Keep your route memorized. Later, maybe an hour, maybe right before dawn, you find him, lying on the floor, right in your path usually. He paused, his eyes boring into mine, but they're wet, gleaming like they're coated in fresh blood. Dark red, if you find him like that, Belle. You leave him. Don't touch him. Don't even kick him aside. Walk around him. Use the spare set from the emergency lockbox in the office. Wait for the day shift supervisor. He deals with him. You just leave him be. Touching him tags you. He searched my face, looking for understanding, for compliance. Got it? No questions, no heroics. Just follow the damn rules. Got it, Jake, I said, my own voice sounding hollow in the cavernous space. He nodded curtly, seemed about to say something else, then just shook his head, gathered his worn jacket, and headed towards the heavy steel door leading back towards the land of the living, relatively speaking. He unlocked it, stepped through, and pulled it shut behind him. The heavy thud echoed, followed by the decisive clank of the bolts locking from the outside. I was alone, utterly alone in the belly of the beast. The silence pressing in, thick and suffocating. As the echo of the locking mechanism finally faded, another sound took its place, faint but distinct, resonating from deep within the dark, silent tiers of C-block. Clang. A pause, long enough to make me doubt I'd heard it. Clang. Metal striking metal. Slow, deliberata, rhythmic, clang. Then, abruptly, silence again. A silence that felt heavier, colder, more watchful than before. My shift had just begun. My nightly patrols through the skeletal remains of C-block quickly became a study in dread management. The vast, echoing emptiness was a constant weight, pressing in from all sides. Every scrape of my boot, every distant clang from the active prison complex, every sigh of the wind through broken window panes seemed amplified, distorted. I learned to map the cold spots, the areas where the smell of damp concrete gave way to something older, fouler. I learned to distrust the silence. Rule 1 came calling about a week into the job. I was doing my rounds on the 3rd tier of C-block, the oldest, most decayed section, flashlight beam cutting through thick dust motes. The air up here felt particularly heavy, stagnant. As I turned the corner at the far end, My beam landed on him, standing rigidly at attention just outside the rusted door of cell C13. Was a figure in faded black and white striped prison garb, the kind only seen in history books. He was unnaturally still, face shadowed, indistinct. Then, slowly, deliberately, his right hand snapped up in a crisp, almost military salute, held unwavering, aimed directly at me. Rule 1. If a prisoner in stripes salutes you, salute back or hell follow. My blood ran cold. Every rational instinct screamed it was a trick of the light. Exhaustion. My own PTSD playing games in the suggestive darkness. But Jake Riley's dead serious tone echoed louder. You salute back. Sharp, respectful. My hand, trembling slightly, rose automatically, mimicking the gesture, snapping a sharp salute into the empty, oppressive air. The figure held its salute for a long, agonizing moment. Then its hand slowly lowered. As its arm returned to its side, the figure seemed to dissolve, fading like smoke, leaving only the grimy cell door and the thick, silent dust. The intense pressure I hadn't even realized I was feeling lifted slightly. I let out a shaky breath, the metallic taste of fear coating my tongue. Over the radio, I kept my voice steady, reporting only the essentials. Control, Bell. Routine check C block, Tier 3. Proceeding. Jake's voice crackled back almost immediately, tight with unspoken tension. Acknowledged routine, Bell. Confirm you acknowledged routine. Affirmative, Control. Acknowledged, I replied, the word feeling heavy, loaded. Good. Jake's voice seemed to relax fractionally. Routine keeps things settled. Stick to the designated route. Don't deviate. The line clicked dead. He knew. He knew exactly what routine I had just acknowledged. The next day, driven by a need for some kind of external perspective, I emailed Dr. Holloway, the historian. Keeping it vague, I mentioned experiencing minor visual distortions due to antiquated lighting systems in C Block during my night patrols. Her reply was prompt, academically keen. Fascinating, Mr. Bell. Could you perhaps note the specific locations and times of these distortions and any accompanying physiological or psychological responses, e.g., feelings of sudden dread, measurable temperature changes, auditory phenomena? Such data is crucial for contextualizing reports of structural stress and decay in historically significant locations. Her focus on my reactions felt unsettling, clinical. Later, during a routine comms check with Officer Sharma in the active facility, her voice held its usual weary professionalism. Everything quiet in the dead block tonight, Bell. Bell? Quiet as a tomb, Sharma. I replied, trying for levity I didn't feel. Yeah, well, she sighed. Keep sharp. Old-timers used to say, stuff follows you out of there if you don't show the proper respect or whatever. Don't get curious. Another warning, reinforcing the rules. The inherent danger everyone but the official handbook seemed to acknowledge. My curiosity, however, led me back to cell C13 later that week during daylight hours, needing to see it clearly. The cell was empty, thick with dust. Nothing remarkable. Except on the grimy concrete floor directly in front of the door, where Stripes had stood, someone had recently drawn a small, perfect circle in coarse gray salt, identical to the salt Jake used at the main entrance ritual. He wasn't just warning me. He was actively working against something here, using methods far outside any security manual. The uneasy truce held for a while. I saluted the occasional spectral prisoner without incident, stepped around cold spots, ignored faint whispers. I learned to live with the constant feeling of being watched by the building itself, the weight of its accumulated misery, a tangible presence. Then came the screaming. I was patrolling near the solitary confinement wing, a notoriously grim section even by Rikers standards, known colloquially as the cage. Heavy, windowless steel doors lined the narrow corridor, radiating a palpable aura of despair. As I approached one specific door, cell S4, its number barely visible under layers of grime and faded paint, I heard it. A low rattle, metal on metal. It rapidly escalated into violent shaking, the heavy door bucking and shuddering in its frame as if under assault from within. Then, the screams began, muffled at first, then rising in pitch and intensity, desperate, terrified, agonized pleas for help, choked sobs, sounding utterly, horribly real. Someone was inside, trapped, being tortured. Rule of 2. If a cell starts shaking, don't open it, even if someone's screaming. My hand instinctively went to the heavy locking mechanism, my mind racing. An urban explorer trapped, a squatter injured. My duty was to investigate, to render aid. But Jake's warning, the absolute certainty in his voice. Opening doors just lets the bad air out. The sheer violence of the shaking, the unearthly quality that now tinged the screams, overriding the initial realism. It felt wrong, like a performance designed to lure, like a trap. With immense effort, I forced myself to back away, down the corridor, heart pounding, sweat prickling my scalp. The screams seemed to intensify at my retreat, following me, calling my name. Belle, Bow, help me. For God's sake, open the door. Before cutting off with a sudden, chilling finality, leaving only the echo ringing in the oppressive silence. As I stood there, shaking, I could feel a faint, low vibration through the concrete floor beneath my boots, as if the very walls were humming with contained energy. When I saw Jake later, near the end of my shift, I had to ask, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Jake, what's the history of Cell S4 in solitary? He stopped wiping down a railing, his face darkening. He stared down the corridor, towards the cage for a long moment. Bad place, Belle. Real bad, he said finally, his voice low and gravelly. Riots kicked off there back in the 70s. Couple guards got dragged in, never came out whole. Inmates turned on each other like rats in a barrel after that. Place digests bad memories, soaks them up. He met my eyes. You hear things down there, you walk away fast. Nothing living to help you with. Opening that door, it's like opening a vein for a shark. You let the island feed on its own damn pain. The island. He'd named it. Seeking confirmation, needing facts. I used the limited archive access Dr. Holloway had arranged for reporting structural decay. I searched for incident reports linked specifically to Cell S4. The official records were sparse, clinical. Inmate deaths ruled suicide. Notes on guard rotations being kept short due to stress factors. Mentions of auditory disturbances attributed to faulty plumbing. But one older, scanned report from the 70s mentioned an unexplained outbreak of mass hysteria amongst guards assigned to that specific wing, requiring medical intervention. The next night, driven by a morbid need to see, I walked past Cell S4 again. The door was still, silent, but shining my flashlight onto the heavy steel, I saw them, dark, spreading stains on the cold metal, like virulent mold blooming outwards from the edges of the door frame, vaguely resembling dozens of clutching, desperate hands reaching out from within. The island digests pain, Jake had said. It looked like it was leaving stains. The prison felt heavier after that, the air thicker, the silence more pregnant with unspoken violence. The phantom smells intensified. Iron, and something like old blood near the showers in B block. The sharp tang of fear sweat near the entrance to the cage. The structural groans of the aging building began to sound unnervingly like whispers, like moans, like the endless, sorrowful sigh of the island itself. My own past, the ghosts I'd come here to escape, felt closer now, stirred up by the concentrated despair of this place. I found myself checking locks twice, scanning shadows constantly. The discipline of my military past warring with the encroaching irrational terror. I also watched Jake more closely. His warding rituals became more frequent, less hidden. I saw him leaving small piles of salt, not just at thresholds, but near specific cell doors known for activity. Saw him carrying small, heavy-looking pieces of rusted iron in his pockets. He seemed more agitated, muttering to himself, his weary eyes darting nervously towards the deepest shadows. He looked like a man fighting a losing battle against an encroaching tide. The third rule came for me on a Tuesday night. Cold and clear outside, but feeling colder still within C-Block's concrete embrace. I was doing my final sweep before the main handover point, needing to secure the inner gate leading to the derelict infirmary wing. I reached for the heavy ring of brass keys, clipped securely to my duty belt. My fingers met empty air. Cold panic washed over me. The keys, heavy, essential, my only way through multiple checkpoints, were gone. Not misplaced. Vanished. I patted my belt frantically, checked my pockets, scanned the floor around me with my flashlight beam. Nothing. They were simply not there. My mind raced back to Rule 3. Keys disappear and reappear bloodstained. Leave them. Disappeared. Okay? Now what? I couldn't secure the infirmary gate. I couldn't access certain backup systems. My patrol route was compromised. I felt a surge of vulnerability, exposed deep within the hostile territory of the prison, without the symbols of my authority, my control. I forced myself to breathe, to think tactically, retraced my last 100 yards. Nothing. Gave up the search, continuing my rounds using master code, overrides where possible. Every shadow seeming deeper, every distant clang making me jump. An hour crawled by, each minute stretching into an eternity of listening, watching. I was heading back towards the main guard station, nerves frayed, when my flashlight beam glinted off something on the floor directly in my path, near the entrance to the C-Block showers. A place known for sudden temperature drops and whispers. My keys. Lying there, gleaming wetly on the grimy concrete. Relief surged, so strong it made me dizzy. I reached down instinctively, then froze, my hand hovering inches above the brass. They weren't wet with water or oil. They were coated, thickly, obscenely, in dark, viscous, fresh-looking blood that hadn't been there when I passed by earlier. It pooled slightly beneath them, stark against the gray floor. Rule 3. Leave them. Nausea churned in my stomach. I backed away slowly, carefully walking a wide circle around the tainted keys, the smell of iron thick in the air. I keyed my radio, my voice shaking slightly despite my efforts. Control, bell. Request day shift check. Status of primary C-Block key set. Found them, apparently damaged, near the Block C shower entrance, leaving them in situ, using spares from emergency lockbox. Jake's voice came back after a moment. Flat, utterly devoid of surprise, laced with weary resignation. Roger that, Bell. Good call. Leave 'em be. Don't touch 'em. The island, it gets hungry sometimes. Bleeds a little. He explicitly named it again. The island bleeds. Use the spares. Log it. Click. My hands were still shaking when I retrieved the spare set from the lockbox in the main office. Later, needing to pass the infirmary wing again, I had to use the spare key on the gate I couldn't lock earlier. As my hand neared the heavy iron lock mechanism, the same area where the bloody keys had reappeared, I felt an intense discharge of static electricity arc to my fingertips, making me yelp and snatch my hand back. Taking a deep breath, I tried again. The key slid into the lock, but it felt stiff, resistant, turning with a faint, wet, squelching sound before finally clicking open. The air that flowed out from the infirmary corridor beyond felt impossibly cold, carrying the distinct, terrifying scent of blood and fear. Something had used those keys while they were gone, and the island was hungry. Jake Riley was unraveling, his carefully maintained veneer of cynical resignation had cracked after the incident with the bloody keys, revealing the raw grief and obsessive fear beneath. His maintenance checks became longer, his disappearances into the sealed-off lower levels more frequent. He avoided my eyes, muttered constantly under his breath, and I saw him tracing those salt symbols more often, warding doorways, vents, even the frame of the broken security monitor. He was preparing for something, and my gut screamed. It was tied to Officer David Chen, his lost partner, driven by a certainty that Jake's actions were actively poking the sentient dread that saturated this place. The island's hunger, as he'd called it. I started watching him more closely. I needed to know what he was planning. Remembering Chen's name was the trigger. I accessed the restricted personnel archives during the day shifts overlap, citing a need to review old incident reports for Dr. Holloway's research. I found it. Chen's disappearance coincided exactly with a massive, unexplained power outage and structural integrity failure in the C-block basement 5 years ago. Official cause: faulty wiring, water damage. But tucked into the digital file was a corrupted audio log from Chen's radio just before transmission cut out. Fragmented shouting about the walls closing in and Jake screaming his name. The final piece clicked when I shadowed Jake late one night, deeper into the restricted basement levels than my official patrol route dictated. He didn't go to the main maintenance hub. He went to the old, disused auxiliary locker room directly beneath the solitary wing. The cage. Through a grime-streaked observation window in the steel door, I watched him. Inside, he'd created a makeshift shrine around one specific, rusted locker, presumably Chen's. A faded academy photograph of a smiling young officer was propped against it. Arranged meticulously on the floor were objects: Chen's tarnished badge, a single dried flower, several heavy iron spikes driven into the concrete, lines of coarse gray salt forming complex patterns, and a shallow bowl already containing a dark, viscous liquid that wasn't oil. And open beside it all, Jake's battered notebook, filled with cramped writing, diagrams, dates, times. He was kneeling, chanting softly, consulting the notebook, preparing to add something from a small, stoppered vial to the bowl. The air coming from under the door felt unnaturally cold, vibrating faintly. I checked my watch. 4:14 a.m., just minutes away from the time on Thomas Hayes' watch. No, wrong story. Chen's watch. The report didn't specify the exact time he vanished, but maybe Jake believed he knew. He was attempting some kind of ritual, right here, right now. Jake, stop! I shoved the heavy door open, the screech of rusted hinges echoing in a confined space. My flashlight beam pinned him. What the hell are you doing? This is insane. You're not contacting Chen, you're calling it. He scrambled to his feet, spinning around, eyes wide and blazing with a fanatic's desperate fire. He shielded the bowl protectively. You meddling fool, he snarled, his voice raw with grief and fury. Stay back, you don't understand. I understand you lost your partner, I yelled back, stepping into the room, keeping my distance but blocking his easy exit. I read the reports, Jake, but this isn't honoring him. This is dangerous. You're stirring things up. It took him, Jake cried, tears streaming down his face now, mixing with the grime. Right here. The walls, the island. It ate him because I hesitated. Because I followed some useless damn rule instead of dragging him out. Don't you see? He gestured wildly at his ritual setup. These offerings. The salt, the iron. They keep the other noise quiet. Focus its attention. Tonight, his voice dropped to a fervent whisper, is the anniversary. The resonance is strongest. If I give it enough respect, maybe it will show me. Show me where David is. Let me hear him. He lunged back towards the bowl, uncorking the small vial, containing more blood, his own, and pouring it into the bowl. Almost time, he muttered, glancing at a cheap digital watch beside the shrine. 4:17 a.m. The moment the liquid hit the bowl, the reaction was instantaneous, violent. A deep, resonating groan vibrated up through the concrete floor, shaking the very foundations. The temperature plummeted, frost instantly spiderwebbing across the metal lockers, my breath pluming white. The single bare bulb overhead didn't just explode. It imploded with a sickening pop, plunging the room into absolute darkness, save for the faint red glow of an emergency exit sign down the corridor outside. From the walls around us, a thick, greasy, black slime began to sweat downwards, smelling metallic like old blood and overpoweringly of decay and fear. The psychic pressure slammed down, immense, suffocating. The collective weight of decades of Rikers, misery, rage, and hunger focusing right here. Whispers erupted, 1,000 overlapping voices, inmates cursing, guards shouting orders from forgotten riots, victims weeping, and chillingly, David Chen's name, repeated over and over like a mantra. Chaos erupted beyond the locker room door, down the main C-block corridor. I heard it. Multiple cell doors beginning to rattle and shake violently, accompanied by a cacophony of terrified screams. Rule 2, amplified, multiplied. On the floor just outside the locker room doorway, I saw them materialize in the faint red emergency light. Not one set of keys, but dozens, brass and steel, cascading down from the ceiling vents, clattering onto the concrete, gleaming wetly with away. Fresh blood. Rule 3, exponentially worse. And flickering in the corridor beyond, multiple indistinct figures in faded stripes snapped to attention, slowly beginning to raise their hands in ragged, mocking salutes. Rule 1, a terrifying chorus line. "It's working," Jake screamed, oblivious or welcoming the horror, his face illuminated by a faint, unholy light seemingly emanating from the offering bowl. "It hears me. David! David? Are you there?" He turned towards the locker, arms outstretched. But the island wasn't interested in conversation. The wall behind Chen's locker bulged inwards sickeningly, concrete cracking like eggshell, the sweating grime sluicing down. The psychic hunger intensified, raw, insatiable, focused entirely on the peak emotional energy of this moment, on Jake's desperate grief. Jake staggered back, finally seeing the predatory nature of the force he'd tried to bargain with. His eyes widened in horrified understanding. Then he looked at me, trapped near the doorway, his face twisting with a final, terrible, desperate thought. "It needs more," he choked out, the island's hunger perhaps echoing through him now. He lunged, not towards the wall, but towards me. More energy. A trade. I scrambled backwards out of the locker room, heart seizing, trapped between the charging, grief-maddened Jake, offering me up as a final, desperate sacrifice, and the overwhelming, sentient hunger of Rikers Island itself erupting around us, the very walls seeming to close in, ready to digest us both. The ritual hadn't opened a channel to the lost. It had rung the dinner bell for the prison itself. The psychic backlash of the island's unleashed hunger slammed into the basement locker room. The swirling vortex of despair didn't take shape, didn't form tendrils. It simply pressed, an overwhelming weight of cold, raw misery and insatiable need that sucked the air from my lungs and made the concrete walls around us seem to weep thick, greasy grime. Jake Riley, caught between his desperate offering and my horrified accusation, screamed as the main force of the backlash hit him. He staggered back towards Chen's locker, towards the epicenter. I saw in the flickering emergency light, the wall behind the locker seemed to soften, to flow like thick, dark tar. Jake reached out towards it, screaming David Chen's name one last time, and the wall enveloped his outstretched hand, then his arm, pulling him inexorably inwards, With a sound like wet cloth tearing, he vanished into the structure itself. His final cry cut off abruptly. The walls solidified instantly, leaving no trace except perhaps a slightly darker, damper patch on the stained concrete. The intense pressure immediately lessened, the chaotic sounds receding, the bloody keys and saluting phantoms dissolving. The island had taken Jake's offering, or perhaps simply digested the source of the immediate disturbance. I was left alone in the sudden, terrifying silence, shaking uncontrollably. The image of Jake being swallowed by the wall burned into my retinas. Scrambling backwards, away from Chen's locker and the wall that had consumed Jake, my hand brushed against his dropped notebook. I snatched it up, needing answers, needing something to cling to. The final entries were frantic, barely legible. Detailed notes on Chen's disappearance, confirming he broke Rule 2, opened a shaking cell in the cage during a period of high activity, and was never seen again. Jake had witnessed it, helpless. His rituals weren't just to contact Chen, but attempts to reenact and somehow reverse that moment, appease the island with offerings so it might release Chen from its digestive process. Utter madness born from unbearable guilt. I had to get out, not just the locker room but C-Block, Rikers, maybe New York itself. I keyed my radio, forcing my voice steady. Control bell reporting. Significant structural failure in C-Block basement, auxiliary locker room area. Supervisor Riley is unresponsive, possibly trapped or injured in the collapse. Request immediate assistance and report priority structural integrity alert. I kept it strictly physical, omitting the impossible truth. Maria Sharma's voice came back, sharp with alarm, likely seeing system alerts lighting up her console. Roger that, Bell. Back up en route to your location. Are you injured? Can you confirm Riley's status? Negative. Injured. I lied about my own shaking state. Cannot confirm Supervisor Riley's status. Visually due to debris and structural instability. Recommend sealing this area pending engineering assessment. Understood. Back up at EF 5 minutes. Stay put if safe, Bell. Waiting in the cold, charged silence near the locker room entrance. The silence felt worse than the chaos. It felt watchful, digesting. Maria arrived first. Flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, taking in the scene. The strange salt lines, the scattered ritual items near the locker, the dark patch on the wall, my pale face. Dios mío, she whispered, crossing herself quickly. Riley. He finally did it, didn't he? Pushed it too far. She looked at me, her usual pragmatism mixed with genuine fear now. Chen. They said it was an escape attempt, covered it up quick, but the old-timers, the ones who worked this block before it closed, they knew. Said Jake was never the same after Dave vanished down here. Said he started leaving things, talking to the walls. She shook her head sadly. This island, Bell, it eats people, one way or another. You need to get out. Report what you saw. The collapse, Riley missing. But don't mention the other stuff. They'll bury you with him. Her words confirmed my decision. Among Jake's scattered ritual items near the locker, my light caught the glint of metal. Chen's tarnished corrections officer badge. Hesitantly, I reached down and picked it up. The moment my fingers closed around the cold metal, a blinding flash seared my mind. Chen's terror. The cell door opening onto impossible darkness. The feeling of concrete flowing like water, pulling him down. Jake screaming his name from the rainy corridor. Then crushing silence and cold. I dropped the badge as if burned, gasping. Chen wasn't just gone. He was in the walls, part of the island now, just like Jake. And the island knew I knew. Surviving the rest of the night was an exercise in pure, disciplined terror. Handed and in the studio, observing the war. disciplined terror. With Jake gone and his rituals ceased, the ambient pressure of the island felt different. Less focused, perhaps, but more pervasive. A low-level hum of malevolent awareness just beneath the surface of the silence. Every creak, every drip, every distant clang from the active facility nearby sounded like a prelude to something monstrous. I completed my final patrol on autopilot, moving quickly, efficiently, sticking to the main corridors, flashlight beam constantly scanning the shadows. My military training kicked in, threat assessment, situational awareness, but overlaid with the chilling knowledge that the primary threat was the situation, was the environment itself. I saw a flicker of movement near cell C13, ignored it, saluted reflexively into the empty air. Rule 1. Heard a faint rattle from deep within the cage. Kept walking, didn't listen. Rule 2. Found a single pristine brass key lying near the infirmary gate. No blood this time. Stepped carefully around it. Rule 3. Implication. The rules were now ingrained survival reflexes. As the first hint of gray dawn softened the harsh lines of the cell blocks, filtering through the grimy barred windows, I made my way, almost running, towards the main C-block exit gate. The air felt thickest here, the silence most profound, as if the island itself was reluctant to release its overnight captive. I waited, back pressed against the cold steel bars, watching the eastern sky over the distant Queensboro Bridge lighten. My breath held tight in my chest. Clank. The sound was deafening in the stillness. The heavy magnetic lock buzzed, disengaged. Sunriser. Rule 3's release. I didn't hesitate. I shoved the heavy gate open and stumbled out into the connecting corridor. Back towards the sounds, the lights, the living part of Rikers Island. I didn't look back. I gave my official report. Structural collapse in the basement. Supervisor Riley missing and presumed caught in it. C-block unstable and unsafe. I mentioned Riley's recent stress, his obsession with his lost partner, implying a potential breakdown leading to reckless action in the basement. Plausible. Accepted. Pending investigation. I requested immediate transfer off the island, citing the traumatic event. Granted. I left Rikers that morning, the city's skyline across the water looking alien, distant. I left New York shortly after, moving west, seeking anonymity, space, someplace without the weight of history pressing down so hard. Found a simple job, warehouse logistics, kept my head down. For months, I almost convinced myself I was okay. The nightmares faded, the hypervigilance eased, until I started noticing the feeling. Walking down a busy city street, passing an old red brick tenement building, maybe a former factory or hospital, a sudden wave of intense claustrophobia would wash over me. The feeling of oppressive silence, of unseen eyes watching from dirty windows, the faint phantom smell of damp concrete and despair. I'd find myself instinctively reaching for my hip, for keys that weren't there, my fingers clenching empty air. One evening, standing at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change, I glanced at the imposing facade of an old downtown library and felt it again. That crushing psychic weight, the echo of confinement, the memory of Jake Riley's desperate face, the hungry silence of C-block. In my mind, sharp and clear as if happening right beside me, echoed the heavy final clang of an iron gate locking shut. I escaped Rikers Island, but the island's hunger, its particular frequency of despair and confinement, had imprinted itself onto my soul. I was attuned now, forever sensitive to the psychic residue of trapped places, forever hearing the echo of cell doors closing, forever feeling the weight of walls that remembered too much. End of watch, perhaps, but the sentence was life. Jake Riley followed the rules, until grief made him break them. Now the island has him, and it saw me too. You can leave the prison, but once the place remembers you, you're never really free again. Which rule would you break first? The salute, the screaming door, the bloody keys on the floor? Let me know in the comments. And if you ever hear a clang behind you, run.